Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another historical humans heritage. And today we are staying quite close to our home and actually quite close to our own hearts. At least I know for a fact, myself and Colum, baseball swing is back in full effect, and we're going to be talking about Wrigley Field, home of the Chicago Cubs, the second oldest stadium in the MLB.
Yep.
I know sports ball.
Yeah.
Uh huh.
We
I,
are once we are once again back stateside. Ever so rarely do we come here for what is, I believe, not a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but in fact a National Historic Landmark.
Which differentiates from the National Historic Register. They are of the same vein. You have to be on the National Register to be a national landmark. But landmark is this even more rare, even more elusive designation that one enables a lot of preservation grants and tax credits, but also puts a bit of heavier restrictions on what you can actually do to the building. So it's
Yeah,
quite
in
quite a rare instance.
in the American food pyramid of of protections, it goes registrar, landmark, UNESCO.
Oh,
Uh, roughly
UNESCO's a little
speaking.
different, but yeah.
But basically, if you get on UNESCO, you better you better be getting put on the other two lists real quick.
Yeah,
You end
usually
up on
they already
UNESCO
are on the
without the
other
other
two,
two.
for sure.
There's nothing in the United States that's on UNESCO that isn't on the other two lists.
Oh, I don't want to fact check that, but I don't feel like that's right.
I feel like it. Well, I might there might be one exception. This is a massive country, but I feel like most things that are on UNESCO are also on the list,
Yeah, but
at least
anyways,
within the bounds of a country. I
this
don't know.
is
Find an exception. Go down, type the exception in the comment section. Do
uh
it. We want to find more places.
yeah. Anyways, talking about Wrigley Field, this is actually a slightly old news article that dates back to 2020 actually, when Wrigley was designated a national landmark. So this is actually a fairly new thing, and ironically, Wrigley is a national landmark, but Boston's Fenway Park isn't even on the National Register.
suck it, Boston.
And to show you the exclusivity, roughly 3% of over 90,000 National Register listed sites gain the landmark designation. And why did it gain designation? Well, it because of its history with the Chicago Cubs, but also it was designed by a very prominent architect of the era, Zachary Taylor Davis. And
Yeah, and I do believe Fenway is on the register, but it is not a landmark.
oh, it was added to the register in 2012.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
very
yeah, and
recently.
yeah. So Fenway made the register, but it hasn't made landmark, despite being older than Wrigley.
It's
Suck
just because
it.
Wrigley's better.
Yeah. Hmm.
Illinois,
No,
Illinois,
no.
Illinois.
Even our baseball curse is better. Billy Goat versus Bambino. Come on, Billy Goat's gonna beat a baby.
Well, so actually, part of the reason the landmark status is huge, and it unfortunately does involve a little bit of politicking, is one of the reasons Fenway wasn't listed as a national landmark is because it's had to undergo a number of renovations to update and to modernize and to really help the stadium continue into the modern era. And that's actually one of the things that the Ricketts family, who own the Cubs, were really concerned with when they took ownership over the stadium, because the stadium was in a really big state of disrepair and needed a lot of work. And like any baseball owner, they're trying to find ways to add new ways to monetize. And some of the ways they did so were new scoreboards in both left and right field that display prominent advertising.
Yep, and the thing too is, unlike Boston, this is Chicago. You pay the inspector.
And
This is how we got here.
uh, the this article that we have pulled up here, which is from the Architects newspaper, so kind of an interesting source, um, is they talk about the U.S. Secretary of the Interior at the time, David L. Bernhardt, who was actually the one that made it the landmark. The politicking comes in when you look at the Ricketts family and certain members of the Ricketts who donated a lot of money to the
Mm.
administration of that era.
I like how you say that era as if it was 50, 60 years ago. It wasn't like two,
No, but without
three.
trying to get political in any direction, the Ricketts family are very prominent Republican donors, and some of them are actually Republican congressmen for the state of Nebraska. And with it being a Republican administration, there were a lot of things that were passed, of which Wrigley getting designated a landmark is one. And the reason why that is also such a big to do is the tax credits, which credits for Wrigley Field and their renovations were in the range of 100 to 125 million dollars. And this is for the renovation of a privately funded $1 billion renovation of the park.
Yeah. And and not to brush politics aside, but to brush depressing politics aside.
No, go right ahead. We made the point.
Part of in this article too is part of the why Wrigley qualifies for this status is also Wrigley Field has some fairly unique history to it. For example, even though it was opened in 1906, it didn't become Wrigley Field until 1927. During the interim, it was home to what is known as the Federal League, which baseball has two leagues, American and National. Used to have a third called the Federal, during which, I kid you not, the Chicago Whales played at Wrigley as their home stadium against the New York Peppers, Baltimore Terrapins, and St. Louis Terriers.
Oh, man.
This hurts so beautifully. It's like Little League names in the majors, and I love it. But Wrigley is unlike, Boston's Fenway, Wrigley is associated with the Federal League, which is a piece of baseball history, and it will never exist again, hopefully.
Well, that
Please.
And there are a number of other historical events that took place at Wrigley, a number of historical aspects that are both iconic in design and architecture, like Wrigley's iconic ivy in the outfield. No other MLB team has that. Their giant marquee on the front of the stadium. No other team maintains that.
No other team has the ivy because the other teams have safety inspectors.
Well,
It's bricks and ivy.
Yeah, you know what? Who needs safety inspectors when you got bricks and ivy? I mean, this is proper decor. Have you seen modern stadiums? They're bland.
Listen,
like,
man,
seriously,
well,
did they take the home aesthetic of like 2005 suburbs? Like, come on.
Well,
if
so
the
that's
right fielder doesn't have to
Throw some
reset his shoulder
statues.
at least once a year, he's not a right fielder.
So, Aaron, that's actually a very valid point, and one that is a very strong argument in terms of modern field design. You actually, I know you're making a joke, but very seriously.
Actually, I'm kind of serious about
in,
this.
In the 1960s, there was a huge movement for municipal stadiums that were multi-purpose. You saw a bunch of teams share stadiums, and one of the most, disgusting, notorious examples of this is actually in Oakland, and it's one of the reasons the Athletics might move, and it's the reason the Raiders moved, is that stadium was built to fit both teams in it, and in which it just created a lot of weird oddities. Like the foul ground in that stadium is 3 times what it is in any other stadium. Their home runs are longer than most others.
There's a lot of quirk. I saw a video by someone going through all the different eras of baseball construction.
Yeah.
Wrigley is what is called a jewel box stadium, in that it was designed to fit into an existing urban environment, being the jewel in the box.
Yes.
I'm not gonna I know it was a little bit of a bit, but at the same time,
no, it's
seriously,
a very serious thing, yeah.
I'm genuinely kind of dissatisfied with because I made the joke earlier, sports ball joke or whatever, but I have actually watched plenty of sports, especially football stadiums. I'm always really I'm just kind of this does not look fun to be in. I understand everything's happening on the field, but the atmosphere doesn't feel like it's fun.
I will say there are a couple of examples. Like, well, I'll give a bad example first because
This
I have
looks
to
fun.
trash on them. The Chicago White Sox. They in the early '90s they demolished their historic stadium, Kaminsky Field, for the new stadium, which is now Guaranteed Rate Field, and it took away almost all of the character from that team stadium. It became sterilized. And you see it in attendance with the games. Even when the White Sox do great, their stadium is empty.
I mean, like, even look at Wrigley Field. It's open air. Like, you can see the city
And the city
in
can
the
see
stadium.
the city can see the Cubs, which is led to a lot of lawsuits when they put the scoreboards up because there were rooftop seats across the street.
I'm
Like,
just
when
saying,
did
like,
U.S.
this is
Cellular
character.
stop paying to be the White Sox field? I'm so lost. They pay so little attention to these people.
Yeah, that it's
This
been
is
about
real.
4 years now, 5 years.
This is
Yeah.
real, like, genuine, like, character. Like, this is
Yeah.
like you feel like not only are you at Wrigley Field, you feel like you're in Chicago.
You feel like you're in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of character, I looked up what a terrapin was, and it's a little tiny turtle.
Aw.
It's a what?
There was an actual baseball team that
With a
that
baby
played at
turtles.
Wrigley because of
Like
the federal league bullshit.
But
Wait, do you
Can't
mean
get
like
over
Yorkshire
finding this
Terrier
fact.
or like Bull
no,
Terrier?
terrapin.
A terrapin.
A terrapin. So so the federal league included the Chicago Whales, which played in Wrigley as their home
Yeah.
field. They went up against. They went up against the. I've lost it. They went up against the
Newark
Peppers,
Boston
Peppers.
the Baltimore
Terrapins.
Terrapins,
Oh.
which is a tiny turtle. It's a little tiny turtle, and I just love that so much. And then they also went up against the St. Louis Terriers. And,
Oh, that's where I got a little confused.
And having owned a Yorkie Terrier, I am completely incapable of taking any of these teams seriously.
I will say though, Aaron, kind of circling back to new stadiums, there are 3 examples of modern classic stadiums that I think maintain that historic atmosphere, but also do new stadiums well. One of which that is universally loved is actually the Baltimore Orioles Stadium, Camden Yards, is universally adored because of the environment. Coors Field in Colorado is another modern classic because they took very interesting, like, unique elements and made it their own. And then also, I've heard a lot of good things about the new stadium in Arlington, the Texas Rangers, like, brand new stadium that they just built, even though it's indoors. But yeah, kind of interesting how stadiums have changed and formed. And like I said, I thought this was an interesting one because we haven't talked about any landmarks.
Any what?
We haven't talked about any landmarks yet, so this is.
We've been in Illinois. We've been on the register. But we haven't talked about landmarks. We've not gone to the upper class there. We did a church. We did a Coca-Cola factory, and now we're at Wrigley Field. We're at the big one.
My home, my team. And on that very biased note, I think that's a good point for us to bow tie this episode up. If you guys enjoyed watching, leave a like down below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of these future videos. Thanks for watching.